All right, make sure you have your snacks, make sure you have your water, make sure you have your notebook, make sure you're taking class, because class is now in session. Welcome, SpyX family, elegance, and social capital. I think this presentation is more so why I really enjoy this. As a social scientist who does education work, I really was drawn to the first arc a lot. Like it drew me in. And of course it draws people in for reasons of like, this is funny, this is great, but I really thought it was a great example of seeing social capital and Lareau's framing of concerted cultivation. Therefore, this is more of a presentation of like, I really like SpyX family a lot, and I think it does a great job. And that is probably my argument for this presentation. My argument is SpyX family is a very great show that uses sociological concepts such as Bourdieu's habitus and cultural capital and Lareau's concerted cultivation to develop their characters and to build a more realistic environment for their characters. Let's move on. Last time we studied My Hero Academia and society, we found that schools and society can be very linked to each other. In particular, in the My Hero Academia universe, the federal government is able to invest resources into education systems in hopes that it produces model heroes. This is not unique to the My Hero Academia universe, and keep this in mind as we go through the SpyX family universe. Social reproduction. Schools also take part in the reproduction of systemic equality and inequality and upholding the status quo. Again, we see this with the Hero Agency. We see this with how schools are connected to each other. Clearly, I did not proofread this, and I left the fill this later. And so, with the fill this in later, we also have social deviance as part of the My Hero Academia society. Social deviance is not a major theme in SpyX family, but it is still an important theme nonetheless. All right, so first, SpyX family, elegance at its finest. We will talk about the characters. We'll talk about reception to the series. Moving on, SpyX family. The series is written by author and illustrator Tatsuyo Endo. When he started writing anime, he started writing darker pieces, particularly around World War II, death. One of his more big pieces was a series called, I left it in the notes, and I can't see my notes. But he wrote another series about a radical religious group and a member of that radical religious group assassinating other people for the religious group. However, this assassin comes in contact with someone who is of like the normal society. And so in this, they begin to realize that, oh, I am the one that is wrong rather than you, and I don't know why I'm assassinating you. So you can see that Endo's work in the past has very similar themes to what he does now with SpyX family. SpyX family has themes around Ostia and Westphalis in conflict with each other. Very much the East versus like USSR, Soviets, and the United States, democracy, communism. And we see that conflict playing out here. Now, the shift that Endo took towards Spy Family, though, was a recommendation by his editor. His editor had recommended, hey, maybe you should write something lighter. And so, hence, we get SpyX Family. But we still continue to see qualities of his past work. We can see that Yor, as the assassin, is the assassin role. He never got rid of that. He still has conflict in between the West, the Soviets and the United States, democracy and communism. And so very, very similar themes, just in a more playful way through schools. The guy that mentioned SpyX Family is just made for kick. The guy mentioned that SpyX, yeah, like he was just trying to figure out what he wanted to do. Also, the moon is the author, his illustration for whenever he talks. So like at the end of Shonen Jump, they post this picture. So like, what's his face? Oda for One Piece has a fish. They all have this. Now, the reception that SpyX Family has been receiving has been really, really good reception. It's won a bunch of awards. It's been nominated for a bunch of awards, and it's continuing to do very, very well. Also, it helps that the opening is a banger. Oh, all right, let's keep moving on. Characters. So SpyX Family has a very wide variety of characters. Clearly, I did not proofread this either, so we're just gonna delete this. let me set up the scene for you. Currently in the world that Spy X Family takes place in, Westeros and Ostia are in conflict with each other. They're essentially in a large Cold War. They've wrapped up the war. They've wrapped up, this is the end of one war that I'm assuming is supposed to represent World War II. And now that they are in a Cold War, Ostia and Westeros are in conflict with each other. And rather than sending combatants and troops, they're using spies. Very similar to the Cold War in the United States between the Soviets and the United States. And so one of the most renowned agents, Loid Forger, is taking a mission called Mission Strix in Ostia. And part of this mission is to infiltrate a school. And so because of this, Loid cannot infiltrate a school. He is old. And so with that, he has to build a fake family, get in touch with the school. The reason the school matters, though, is because there's a high-ranking official who is a part of the Ostian government who has a student enrolled in that school. And so part of Loid's job is to make sure that he's able to be in contact. And I don't know what his role is with the other guy. I'm not sure if he's supposed to assassinate him, do something, but he's supposed to be in contact with this individual. Now, Anya is an adopted girl by Loid. And all we know about Anya, and all the anime knows, is that she is a telepath. We know that she has some backstory with human testing and being a telepath. But Anya is cute and also an incredibly important part. She causes a lot of trouble. She is gremlin. She likes peanuts and does not like carrots. And she causes a lot of trouble. Next, we have Yor Forger. Yor was originally, she works in the Ostian government, and she is trying to have a cover-up to make sure that no one sees that she's single. Because in Ostian society, I guess it's really important that you are in a relationship and married, a partnered relationship, particularly, like a functioning home in such, or like what's the word I'm looking for? Nuclear family. And so they want traditional family incomes. And so we have Yor, who is not supposed to be a full-time assassin, but we learned that Yor takes up assassination because her and her brother grew up in really hard times and she needed money, and she found that she was really, really good at assassinating people. And so Yor is an assassin on the side, but she's really looking to I think she's trying to give up that life right now. And so Yor and Loid meet at a clothing shop one day, and Loid identifies Yor as, she's probably a really good person, identifies Yor as an individual who would be very good for this mission. He does not know anything about her assassination work, but he needs a wife of some sort to be able to interview at the school. So Yor, I also really like Yor. I'm pretty sure I have a type. We're not going to go into that. Loid is really cool too. I like Loid a lot. Like, Loid is goals. Let us keep going. So, finally, the last character that we have is Henry Henderson. Now, Henry Henderson is not necessarily what you'd call an antagonist at the beginning, but Henry Henderson definitely is prohibiting Anya's entrance into the school. And he is the headmaster for the school, who is, I believe, teaching Anya's class. One of Henry Henderson's most important lines and traits is elegance, and god dang, he really takes elegance to another level. And so it's important that we remember Henry Henderson because of his role in being able to enforce elegance. Now the question is, what exactly is elegance to Henry Henderson? And I think that's an important question that I can kind of answer. So those are the cast of characters that we'll be working with. Of course, there are many other characters that we have. Like, we have the boy, I forgot his name, Damian. We have Damian. We have a bunch of other people as well. We have the dog. The dog is real cute. But unfortunately for this analysis, we don't need to talk about them a lot. Really, we're going to be focusing on Loid and Henry. But Anya and Yor are also important parts because they are supposed to be a nuclear family, and because Loid has to focus on helping Anya and Yor engage in upper class practices. So next, Eden Academy. Eden Academy is the utmost prestigious university of Ostia. Many important figures attend Eden Academy. Children attend Eden Academy. Becky Blackwell is a friend of Anya's, and her family owns a large weapons distributor. And so she's an important character. We have Damian, who's also the son of an important figure. And we also have many other politicians who are involved. Like during the dodgeball game, we see like this giant kid who's like the son of a military commander. Basically, all the people who go to Eden Academy are the most prestigious and the highest of their class. To get into the school, there is one entrance exam that you have to score a minimum of a 31 on, and after that, there is a family interview. The first year curriculum, as we are aware, is currently history, math, science, reading, and optionally, and these are their choices, physical education, arts and crafts, and classical languages. So to prepare for Eden Academy, Anya had to do a lot of studying. And to get in here is a huge deal. I would say that very much like for colleges in the United States, you have the Ivy Leagues. Eden Academy is most likely of the Ivy League for K through 12 education. Particularly, I would most likely draw the connection between Eden Academy and probably Harvard University. So we can see the whole first arc of Spy X Family is to get Anya enrolled in here. And I'm really going to be focusing on this part only. While I may draw some examples from other parts and other future parts of Spy X Family, we will focus on the first admissions portion because that is what drew me to this series. So the frameworks that we'll be using for this, we will be focusing on two frameworks by authors Pierre Bourdieu, who passed away in like 2003, and Annette Lareau, who is still currently living and working at the University of Pennsylvania in their sociology department. Pierre Bourdieu is very concerned with dynamics of power and builds upon theories of Weber and Marx. So last month, we talked about functional and conflict theory. And so this theory that we'll be using, basically this analysis that we'll be focusing on, we'll be focusing and using conflict theory. So as I said earlier, we have Pierre Bourdieu, who passed away in 2003-ish. He focused on conflict theories and theories focused on power, building upon Marx and Weber. Marx, as many of us know from communism, but Marx is well known for class conflict and what is the word? The proletariat and the bourgeois. He builds upon that and focuses on a theory of habitus, which is his theory of social capital. We will talk a bit more about that, I believe, in the next couple of slides. Annette Lareau is currently still alive. She works at the University of Pennsylvania and wrote a very seminal book to sociology of education called Unequal Childhoods, Class, Race, and Family Life. Essentially, in this piece, she focuses on how social class shapes children's experiences. She goes through and identifies how social class shapes children's life experiences. And again, we will go into this. She coins the terms the accomplishments of natural growth and concerted cultivation. And how she did this is she basically, her and her research team followed a bunch of families and took notes on their lives and field notes and wrote about the, and then like consolidated, coded through the data to understand how there are differences across social class. And we'll go through her findings as we get into the theories and frameworks. So for forms of cultural capital, there are three different forms within cultural capital. First is embodied capital. Embodied capital are things such as your accent, your culture, your hobbies, your interests. And so embodied is like, for me as like a Korean American, Chinese American, like whenever I do activities or like when I eat food, I prep like Korean food. So like I really enjoy dakmandugguk. Dakmandugguk. I made that today for dinner. I should be able to, I'm not should, while most people expect me to be able to speak Korean, 나 한국말 super 진짜 못해요. Also accents though, like when I speak English, I am from the Midwest, and so that is also a culture, Midwestern culture. We got the Midwestern, all sorts of things in the United States. Also very different from like the UK culture, and so accents and culture shape, but also the hobbies that I have, right? As someone who is now a part of the VTubing community, there is a lot of things that I know about VTubing that most normal people do not know, that I had to learn. Like the phrases mom and dad, like mama and papa, mom is like the one who creates you, who rigs you. Also like a lot of other pieces that go into VTubing culture that people don't know. Also interests. For example, like as a VTuber, there's a certain niche interest that I have, and like sometimes there's just very little crossover of them. For example, if you are an academic VTuber, very, very, very brief overlap. However, for things like, watching anime in VTubers, very big overlap. There are cultural things that we can talk about, like Oshinoko. That's something we all relate to. That's also something we're super interested in. I'm interested in. You're going to be interested too. I'm kidding. You don't have to be interested. But embodied capital is the intangible things that make up some of the cultural context of which we come from. And of course, this varies from person to person. This is not like, oh, we are a part of VTuber culture, we know VTuber things, but that doesn't mean we all have the same VTuber interests, because when different identities, cultural identities overlap, we get different blends of it. So for example, like I enjoy C-pop ballads and JJ Lin. Do other people in the VTubing community even know who JJ is? Most likely not. That's just a Zhuni thing. That is embodied capital in a nutshell. Next, we have objectified. And objectified is not termed in the phrase like, I have objectified this person. Literally objects, physical, tangible character or objects, such as cars, books, and music. For example, if you are part of the VTuber community, you most likely own some form of VTuber merch. I don't. And with that, if you're a part of a different community, right? So let's say like you're a huge Oshi of, I'm going to use Carrot as an example because she has merch right now. Like you got Carrot's 10K celebration merch, right? That shows you are a part of the Carrot Kuromi community. And for example, if Zhuni gets to like merch one day, and you know that you can be a part of the Zhuni community with Zhuni merch. Those are indicators of some of the cultural backgrounds that you have. Or for another example, if you are a VTuber, right? Just a general VTuber, you have your model. Like my model is a sign for me, other people, that I am of VTuber culture. Literally, VTuber culture. I cannot exist without this. And so basically objectified is the objects that indicate how you can present yourself that identifies your cultural backgrounds. The last form of capital that's in here is institutionalized capital. Institutionalized are forms, paper, things that identify that you have a particular qualification. For example, I've got a couple master's degrees. I've got I'm working on my PhD. I'm a grad student. I will be getting my PhD at some point. However, those are credentials that say I generally know what I'm talking about. Other credentials that exist are such as I have 1 million subscribers on YouTube. That is very much a kind of credential that people have. That's institutionalized. That shows 1 million people regularly follow and engage with you, right? Twitter is also another way for institutionalized capital. Now, the thing is, this capital is very, very specific, at least in this example. These forms of capital are specific to the culture that it's a part of. For example, as an academic, and I see like a VTubing account with 1 million subscribers, what does that indicate to me? This indicates to me that you are an incredibly great performer, you're an incredibly great social media presence, and while I think there is some form of capital, you may not have the same level of rigor when you're talking about methodologies, when you're talking about literature. I do know that you are an expert in social media. However, when you look at Zhuni as like, oh, he has like a PhD, that means nothing to VTubing. It literally means nothing to VTubing. Congrats, you are going to get a PhD. How many subscribers do you have? Right? So all this to say, institutionalized capital very much varies based on the kind of environment and cultural background that you're engaging in. And like, you know, I am a CEO of big name company. Like, what does that mean to us VTubers? That means nothing. So institutionalized capital can vary based on different cultural backgrounds, but it's also important that you situate it within that cultural background, and still it does count. Okay, that is different forms of cultural capital. Moving on. So we have language now to identify different forms of cultural capital, but we also have the more specific frame. And again, Annette Lareau did her study by going into different communities and understanding how social class shaped different childhood development. And so she came up with 2 different ways of growth. First, Annette Lareau coined the term concerted cultivation. Concerted cultivation is essentially, imagine your suburban middle-class mom, right? You're in the suburbs, you're like a kid, and you're getting shipped off to soccer practice. Then after that, you gotta go to piano lessons, and then after that, you gotta go somewhere else. Concerted cultivation as a parenting style is that the parents will help push you in the particular direction that you're going in to be able to grow in a particular way. In concerted cultivation, though, these middle-class parents will also teach kids to engage, right? They're not just telling kids how to do things. They're engaging children in the process. For example, if I had a child, I would say to my child, so what did you think about lunch today? Did you think it was too salty? How can we make it better? Or examples of like, what kind of games do you want to play? What kind of sports do you want to engage in? Those are examples of like concerted cultivation, as we are asking the children to give us feedback rather than just one thing at a time. And so concerted cultivation is empowering kids to be able to ask questions and challenge authority. However, the contrast to that is accomplishments of natural growth. In this kind of growth, accomplishments of natural growth are long periods of unstructured time. So for example, if I were a parent who was doing accomplishments of natural growth, I would just be like, go outside, figure it out. That's actually how I was raised. My parents would like, okay, Judy, there's the library, have fun, figure out what to do. Or like, oh, here, have fun at the driving range, go whack balls for 2 hours while I'm out. Accomplishments of natural growth is basically, let's pray and hope that your kid figures out what they're doing. And so parents, and also in this, parents give orders to their kids rather than having opinions. For example, if I were to give my kid lunch again, rather than saying, oh, how was lunch today? What did you like or dislike? Did you like your sandwich? That is a question that assumes you like the sandwich. And they don't really get an opinion on it. Good, I'm glad you enjoyed your sandwich. You're getting another sandwich tomorrow. Oh, you want mac and cheese? Nah, none of that. Another ham sandwich. You want something else? No, more sandwiches for you. And so that's what natural growth would look like. Okay, that was probably a little bit much with the ham sandwiches, but the point is that accomplishments of natural growth, kids aren't really given an option. Kids are essentially like, hey, like, do it. I am telling you how to do it. My parents were unique in that they would tell me to figure it out and then wouldn't get mad when I don't. Yeah, like that. So I think that's like a combination of a concerted cultivation and natural growth. And so this is to say, like, one, these are very broad categories based on the area of study that Lareau had. However, as a social scientist in the field of sociology, essentially what they do, they create broad arguments based on these things and we apply them to different scenarios. And so while your parenting style, or however you reflecting on your parenting, may embody like concerted cultivation or accomplishments of natural growth, it is very different based on where you are. All right, so with all of that being set up, we have our characters, we have Loid, Anya, Henderson, Yor. We have two frameworks. We have Bourdieu and we have concerted cultivation by Lareau. And with that, we need to first answer the question, how is elegance defined by Henderson? Henderson is incredibly excited about elegance. And what Henderson says is elegance is what will bring about a better world. But what is elegance? He never outright says what is elegance. He identifies how elegance can be used to bring about a better world, but he doesn't say, I am looking for XYZ qualities. Now, the reason why we're focusing on elegance so much is because of the role that Henderson has at the school. From our last presentation with My Hero Academia, we see that schools have a very important part of general society and socialization. And with the role that Henderson has in cultivating the next generation of scholars and working people, he also vets the parents. And so with that, we have to very carefully consider what is Henderson's definition of elegance. Yes, so we're gonna do that. We're going to take some time and examine elegance. Now, I have pulled many examples of what Henderson defines as elegance all here. My favorite one is this one. There's nothing more elegance than the precious elegance of youth. And this is particularly as an example of when Damian is in detention. And so what his friends do is basically they try to get detention. And so they do all these things where Henderson's like, yeah, you should be in detention. But Henderson knows. Like, when you all think you're being clever with your teachers, we know what's going on. Like, oh, you got a crush on this individual? She might be out of your league. No, I'm kidding. I digress. Let us return to the point. Henderson really applauds these two boys wanting to spend time with Damian and help him relax because Damian's really stressed out. We also see that she continues to emphasize the importance of friendship between students. It may have been a personal grudge, but she even stood up for the boy. She stood up to the boys for the sake of her friend. Très Elegance, Anya Forger, right? So even in this case, yes, it was not elegant. In his eyes, it was not elegant to punch him in the face. But for the sake of friendship, he is able to put aside that and say that is elegant in prioritizing friendships between the youth. In this example down, we'll get to some of the other examples, but I think these are two examples that I don't talk about. But these are just some of the examples that I've pulled of Henderson and Elegance. So first, let's go into Henderson's teaching pedagogy, because one, I think this is really important. When we talk about his elegance is tied to how he teaches, and the way that he carries himself as an educator. And so in this case, we do see that Henry does put a very big emphasis on being educated in the particular math, science, etc., knowing your basic fundamentals. And so we can see that in this scene, he's looking out the window and sees that Loid is an incredibly elegant individual. However, when he looks at the scores, he's like, that doesn't make any sense. How is this elegant man parenting Anya, whose score is crap? But also we see that he is tying scores to behavior, right? And in this case, he is confused because the scores do not match up to his expectations of Loid's elegance. And so in this, we see that, okay, Henderson has some kind of connection between the way that people are smart and people carry themselves. And as we see, is not generally a thing. But I think what Henderson is truly looking for is an overall well-rounded individual in being elegant. You can not necessarily like a min-maxing, but a jack of all trades. Someone who's elegant should be able to navigate different situations, right? And we see in this beginning arc that Loid is navigating a lot of different scenarios with elegance. We see what he's trying to stop the bulls. He's like, okay, I know how to navigate this. I am also prepared. I am well-rounded. I know how to support people emotionally, in the example of like when the kid falls down, the setup. But when he's looking at particular elegance, he's looking for well-rounded individuals who are able to navigate a lot of different situations. This is the example. Well, aren't you the impudent one, Law Forger? Housemaster, we are supposed to be evaluating the children. You fool! Children emulate their parents. A 31-point child must have 31-point parents. I will expose them as the hoi polloi they are. Everybody watch out, right? This is very much speaking to what I had said earlier. His belief in that parents emulate their children. And this ties back to Lareau's argument of concerted cultivation. This is very much high-class practices. How do our children emulate and carry the values that we have? Very similar to what Hidden Scotty said, but enforcing that they are able to think for themselves and they are able to be adults in this world. Concerted cultivation, very much concerted cultivation right there. In this case, we are also seeing that he is the one who controls and upholds elegance for the whole of the school. We see him in a position of power where he's able to utilize resources to identify physically based on the objects of the cultural capital. Remember, objects, right? This is how Loid is presenting himself, clean and prim. All the other people here, like look at the way this kid's walking. This kid is not necessarily know the unspoken rules of upper class society. He has his head back, he's chill. Is that elegant? Not necessarily. We see Anya, though, the way that she's walking in this scenario, very smooth, very, as I may say, elegance. So yes, elegance in this case is what he's looking for. He is identifying cultural capital in this case. Next, in different ways in upholding elegance, right? In this case, this is what the example I was talking about before. In fact, I think the gray suit is a better fit for this school. Indeed, I have felt like some sort of peasant interviewing the other one. Thank you for giving me a reason to change, young man. And so in this case, Henderson is very shocked that in this case, it was definitely the kid's fault that he fell in. And of course, the school paid him off to fall in. But he sees that Loid does not blame the kid. He says, It's okay. This is better for me anyways, and you're doing a great job. Thank you. So this is an example of elegance here. And then we have another example here that, this is after like after the whole the animals get let out of the farm. We see that Loid comes prepared with another outfit. Oh, I'm sorry, this goes this way. They're all prepared and they're good to go. And so again, going back to Henderson really wants to see people who are well-rounded and can think of over a lot of situations. Now, we also have an example where Henderson is okay with violating social norms in order to enforce elegance. And I think this is a really important value. And also, I really respect Henderson as an educator. While yes, he's a little over the top with his elegance, I also think it's really important that he upholds his beliefs as a teacher, right? He goes ahead and the person that he punches is essentially a nepo pick for the school. The instructor's father he's punched in the face is like the head principal or something. I don't know, some high position. And so punching him in the face is a huge, huge deal. And so he still upholds his ideals of elegance. And even in this committee, he's still upholding his ideas of elegance. Even Anya being on the wait list is him upholding ideals of elegance. Yes, they may have screwed up the interview, but the elegance and the way that how they carry themselves and the way that they work through all the situations is more important than this action. And so, yes, Henderson is incredibly important to not only enforcing elegance, but also enforcing what are the ideals of upper class society and how you carry yourself, what you want to do for your community and your spaces that you are in. That is why it is important that we're able to figure out what elegance is and the skill check that he enforces to understand elegance in this example. So, what is elegance? Elegance is the particular qualities that Henderson wants. He wants people to be prepared, kind-hearted. They do have to have a particular set of upper class values and objects, as we see in the way that they're gauging people when they look. And so, essentially, the first arc of Spy X Family is a skill check. Basically, you need to have enough capital to be able to enter this space. So imagine, you're playing Tears of the Kingdom, and let's say you're going to Elden Village, and you need a certain amount of money to buy armor, and you need to buy fire armor, or need to know how to do particular things. I'm not mad. That is what goes through this first arc. And so we are going to go through some of the ways that Loid navigates elegance and how he teaches his family and adopts cultural capital. Now, the other thing I think that is really important is knowing that Loid is a spy. This makes for a great premise in being critical to being able to embody and emulate culture, right? Other characters, it's about just fitting in, but Loid is a master of disguise. He must fit into different spaces and know how to navigate these spaces well. Hence, cultural capital, embodied capital. Again, reviewing what we talked about before, embodied capital are the cultural traits that you have. So you can see in this first example, this is embodied, but also objectified culture. So one, they're observing and evaluating every move we make, trying to ascertain which of us are truly Eden Academy material. Both of you stay on your toes. The interviews are watching us. Just do it like we practiced. Do it just like we practiced. And so you can see here, they're judging, right? Look how they're dressed in this case. The flowers, the dress, the ties, they are looking at not only what they're wearing, but how they carry themselves. Are their shoulders back? What's going on? Etc. So in this case, we see embodied capital is the way that they're carrying themselves, but also what they're wearing and knowing what exactly to wear. This year's applications are a slovenly bunch. I doubt one of them could even spell the word elegance. A fine morning to you, housemaster. There is nothing fine about watching these vulgarians defile the hallowed grounds of Eden Academy. Elegance is at the root of tradition. Elegance is what will bring about a better world. And again, going back to elegance, this is rooted in traditions of this country. And so that is why in the next slide, we see that Loid goes and visits cultural artifacts. He goes and sees the politicians and listens to politicians and takes Anya to the museum where she sees boobies, artful boobies. This is in the case of highest classes of art, not just looking at boobies on the internet. Anyhow, I digress with the booby conversation. Tradition and social status are highly valued at Eden Academy. We must become accustomed to the finer things, or our lack of refinement could expose us, right? This is him identifying that elegance is the root of tradition. He knows that what to do. And he's able to hopefully cultivate those things. And Yor is struggling, and Anya is also struggling a lot. But again, spoiler alert, they do get into the school. Also here, they're taking in the message. In this nationalist party, believe there's a path to reconciliation with the West. Patriotism is a part of the curriculum at Eden. We need to be well-versed in politics, history, and more like appeasement, just bomb Westlers back to the Stone Age. In those environments, right, we have those conversations versus you are a Democrat, you are a Republican, you are X party. Like you need to have such opinion. This is the opinion I'm telling you to have versus I am choosing to have my own opinions. And in this case, yes, Loid is doing this just for the sake of being able to get in the school and embodying and being in alignment to the beliefs of the school. However, it is important that they get into the school and that they're aligned with these traditions and, in essence, elegance. So we can see that in here, Loid is trying to make sure that everyone is prepared. They have the right answers. And so even in this case, yes, this is embodied culture. These are knowing the right answers and kind of faking it, but faking it works. Fake it till you make it. And in this case, we see that Anya is prepared. She has the answers ready. What do you do on your days off? I go to the opera and art museums and eat at restaurants. That's not something I do. I go to the grocery store and I do groceries. I practice piano. I don't go to the opera. I don't go to the museums. I do like museums. I really like museums. And so it's not only about how Anya carries herself, but also how Yor carries herself as well. Okay, next we have more embodied capital. And so again, this is knowing the actions, right? These actions are what indicates to Henderson what is important. And so here he's shocked that they're saluting the founder, but you can see here, I am Twilight, master of 1,000 faces. I respect tradition. I can be exactly who you want me to be. I do it every day. And then we see Anya, bald guy. And then we also see Yor. I have no idea who this man is, but I will follow. Which I think is hilarious. They don't have any idea, but they're able to fake it, right? As long as you are able to exhibit the qualities of upper class, then you are able to be in that space. We also have some other struggles across class in the way that Damian basically has a crush on Anya, but he says that one, he's not going to allow this. This is also after he gets into school. And basically what he says is, that's right, she went right against me, right to my face, straight at me, looking me right in the eye. No, that's not what I meant. My heart is pounding, not with the commoner like her. I'd rather die than accept that. The heart wants what the heart wants, Damian. Also, Anya's adorable. How dare you say that? But also, he is in conflict with one. He is committed to his family. And we see that his conflict throughout this is, how do I serve my dad best? And of course, this requires therapy. But this is a manga. We won't get therapy like that. He's trying to figure out how to best support his family and how he can be that, how he can serve his dad to gain his father's affirmation. And so in that, like, I'm assuming not with the commoner like her is a phrase like, oh, I need to be married to upper class, someone of like similar social class where I can use them, etc. And so with that, we see that there is a struggle even between classes. Upper class should not marry lower class, and with these ideas. We also see other forms of embodied cultural, traditional nuclear families, right? You've got to be kidding me. Who doesn't? A wife who doesn't even cook? You need to work harder to set an example for your daughter, ma'am. And then Loid responds with, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. My wife is incredibly neat. She keeps the house spotless. And she does a wonderful job with our daughter. She's so intuitive at times. And then he's talking about Anya. She's so intuitive that at times I'd swear that she was reading my mind. As for weaknesses, I do wish she was a little less picky about food. And then, what do you see in her, Mrs. Forger? How would you describe your parenting style toward her? As you say, I'm not her birth mother, so I must admit that at first I might have spoiled her a bit in my attempts to win her over. I have had to learn to be strict sometimes. For the sake of her future, I work hard to remember that, just like we rehearsed. And so, in this case, we see that this garbage man is asking about nuclear families and pushing these buttons. And he is also very much showing what women need to do in the society. In this society, women are to be housewives and to clean the spaces. You also see that in some of the chapters, particularly upper class women. Damian's mom actually runs into Yor at the mall and they do a big shopping trip. In this case, we also see that most of the people who are in power are men. And so in here, we see that this is like a traditional power structures, traditional, etc. And this is the capital that is valued. And as many people have said, it's about fitting into the system of society and also trying to find a balance. In this case, Loid does a really good job of doing that. And I think in this case, you've seen a lot of different examples of the different ways cultural capital is exhibited. Just the way that the characters' mannerisms, the characters' outfits, the characters' discourse, they're all a part of building this larger argument about how Loid is able to engage. Finally, we have institutionalized capital here. Institutionalized capital in this form comes in being accepted into Eden Academy. And so on the right is a panel from Eden Academy. You are the chosen few. And I think this phrase of "you are the chosen few" is an incredibly powerful statement, particularly considering how difficult it is to get into Eden Academy. And so at like the Ivy League institutions in the United States, there's very much this message: you are the chosen few who have attended this university. You are the top, the 1% to be able to achieve such greatness at this institution. You can and will do great things. They have an abundance of resources to essentially imagine whatever you want to do. And so this example here is very similar to on the right. That is Harvard's commencement. I think that's a very common phrase, but I also like it looks very similar to the imagery here, right? We have I don't know if there's a podium or not, but it's a lectern, a podium, it's a thing with a mic. And so we also have the Ph.D. robe. This is also Tom Hanks. He was their speaker. I think he was given an honorary degree. The cap he wears, this guy has a Ph.D. You can tell he has a Ph.D. because he has a different robe. He has these things here. He has the octagon hat. Other PhDs in other countries are different. There's one country that gives you a sword when you defend your PhD. Like, I want a sword. I don't know why I picked the United States. I'm kidding. I know why I picked the United States. I live here. But you know, I just, all I get out of my PhD is I have to buy an expensive robe that I'm gonna wear once. You know, when I get that PhD, I'm gonna wear the crap out of that robe all the time. Anyhow, maybe not. I don't know. We'll talk about that. Anyhow, institutionalized capital is simply being at Eden Academy. Other forms of cultural capital. This is not institutionalized. It should probably be more culture and objectified, but it says institutionalized. I'm going to change that because I can. So embodied cultural capital in this case is once Anya's in school, she has to have very similar interests to the rest of her classmates. And so basically, Anya was like, Daddy, why don't we go on cool things like cruises and stuff, or have a dog? And so even though these are qualities that eventually lead to objects that she obtains, this is very much the flavors and tastes of the upper class, right? Why don't we go on cruises and travel, you know? And that's what happens here. Anya eventually goes on a cruise and with Dad, and they hang out. And again, we also see she goes to the opera and art museums. So again, we also see violations of these norms, and Twilight makes a very calculated decision here. And this is where Loid wants to almost punch the guy, but punches the mosquito. And again, he's able to make those decisions. Violations of cultural capital. Okay. Wow, there's a lot of slides. Cultivating youth. So that is all the forms of capital that we can identify, at least some of them. And I think those are the most prominent examples that we've pulled from Loid and how he's navigating it. Loid and his family navigating cultural capital. So the next question is, now that we've identified different ways that capital is practiced and embodied, we can look at how the youth are cultivated at Eden Academy based on the theories that we have been presented. And also understanding that elegance is an incredibly important part of this. So we see that Anya very much embodies concerted cultivation. And we've talked about this already. We've talked about her going to museums, eventually going on cruises, sitting through this opera, but we actually don't see many examples of natural growth unless it is a backstory for someone. Because Anya is now of the upper class. However, Loid did not grow up in upper class society. Loid grew up in a war-torn country in a village. And his ways of spending time with his friends is, let me move myself over, is hanging out at the, hanging out and being kids. Like, he just runs around. And so they play war, and of course his dad gets mad at him. But yeah, he goes out and plays war with his friends. Like, they just facilitate their own time. And fortunately, Loid turned out great because of that. Other examples would be, I think Yor worked a lot. And so accomplishments of natural growth, I don't think it's considered cultivation, but she had to work to support her younger brother. And so we don't really see examples of accomplishments of natural growth as often unless you're going to the backstory of one of the characters because of some of the class differences between the characters. Oh my God, this is short. But the conclusion for this is, again, I have written this out already. Let me scooch myself over one more time. So I wrote this out because I think it's really important that why I really like Spy Family, but why I really enjoy Spy Family. Yes, Spy Family has a banger opening, and indeed Anya is very cute. However, what really sells the series to me is the insertion of habitus and concerted cultivation. The story is meant to be a broader narrative about conflict between two warring nations. However, the show focuses on how elites and education play a fundamental role in shaping the future of a country. Loid's profession demands that he is able to understand nuanced social cues lest his life be compromised. Further, his humble background and tragic story provide him a lens and motivation to be able to move forward and continue to do his work. While Henry Henderson is first introduced as a comical character, Henderson provides a measure of elegance in the expectations of Eden Academy. He strives to uphold elegance, however, he will deviate when his personal teaching pedagogy contrasts school bureaucracy. Spy X Family does a good job portraying how Bourdieu's habitus can be applied, particularly because of the nature of Loid's work. While after the first arc there's less mentioning of habitus, the series can still provide many examples. And that's the last slide. All this to say, I really enjoy Spy Family. I enjoy the humor. I enjoy the characters. I enjoy the backstories. But overall, what really sells me on Spy X Family is the way they incorporate sociological concepts into the characters and how they work. I guess this is a weird thing. I don't think it's weird, but I eat my burgers with a fork and a knife. And like, that apparently caused a riot. Like, people are like, what's wrong with you, Zhuni? Like, why are you using a fork and a knife? And I'm like, why not? I don't want to get my hands dirty because I am elegant.